What's up, gaggers? Today I want to go over recent events surrounding Gamin4Hope and break down some of his problematic behaviors throughout his content creation career. To begin though, I just want to preface the video by saying that I actually got to chat with Gamin4Hope, and he allowed me to ask him various questions which he gave answers to, and I've uploaded that video to my channel, and I've put a link to it in the description down below. To me, he seems like a pretty nice guy, but there are certain things he has done that I believe warrant criticisms. But first, I think it's worth going over his current controversies he finds himself in. And really the best place to start is to immediately jump into one of his recent videos, specifically one titled The Truth About the New Accusations. To keep my video somewhat brief, I won't go into depth on each point from his video, but I'll give a gist based on each category I'm about to list. As you can see, the video has multiple timestamps throughout it, and I can break down each one into 4 separate categories, and they are as follows. There's Overwatch 2, Many Coincidences, Why Even Bring It Up, and Trolling and Bait, which encompasses pretty much every other category besides Overwatch 2. Just to cover it briefly, people dog on Gamin4Hope's Overwatch 2 abilities because it's humorous that, despite him having a short-form series that spanned nearly 300 days where he says he's going to play Overwatch 2 hard and work his way up to being a pro at it, he still is stuck in ranks that an average person could reasonably achieve. He hasn't hit Masters in ranked in many seasons, and he has never achieved the rank Grandmaster. He dresses an Overwatch former pro who had done a VOD review of his Doomfist gameplay, and pretty much agrees with the criticism that the creator gave him. Besides the mockery and irony of this, I really don't see much more reason to dwell on the Overwatch 2 aspect of the drama surrounding Gamin4Hope, as I think there are 3 things he deserves criticism for, and that will be discussed after this section of the video. The next category, which I'm just calling Many Coincidences, is an allegation that was likely levied by detractors just to piss with them, but there are a lot of things that stack up that could lead a reasonable person to think Gamin4Hope was actually dog whistling about the KKK. First and foremost, it is clear by just the things Gamin4Hope has said that he leans conservative. He's at the very least hesitant about masks. He believes the 2020 election was won by Trump despite Biden having won. He believes that pornography kills love. He disagrees with the idea that there are more than 2 genders. And he also believes anything LGBT+ is sinful. Now, to his credit, Gamin4Hope has no content that I'm aware of that would explicitly show he's in any way racist besides some stupid jokes. The problem was, however, that his logo for his channel features a cross that is red. Now, just being conservative leaning and having a cross that is red as a logo isn't anything. However, it is compounded by the fact he has a Patreon, and prior to the controversy, he had 3 tiers named Contributor, Nobility, and Crusader, all of which were spelled with a K up front, which he claims was simply because he refers to his audience as a kinship. Finally, though, there is another major issue in that the tiers had specific designs for them, all of which had that red cross on shields, which vaguely resembles historic KKK designs and symbols. The odd thing about all of this, though, is that although this allegation was likely constructed and levied by a detractor, it is kind of odd that 4 major coincidences allowed for such an accusation. He is conservative. He has a logo that is a cross that is red. He had 3 tiers that all started with K, and he had that red cross on shields. In absolutely all fairness, however, I believe that this wasn't an elaborate dog whistle. It was most likely just a bunch of random happenings that if you look at a certain way would paint a pretty bad picture. But now going on to the next category that I've just titled, Why Even Bring It Up? Mostly what I have to say is that he does explain how he's respectful toward people in the LGBT+ community. However, he believes that all of it is sinful. Now, this video won't delve into the discussion and debate that is surrounding this, but just know that Gamin4Hope is a Christian, and despite his beliefs that the LGBT+ community is riddled in sin, there are interpretations of the text of the Bible that show that it isn't necessarily inherently sinful. Another part about his opinions, which again he derived from his interpretation of the Bible, is that all sin is equal. To be fair, that seems to be more widely accepted, but having both of those interpretations together makes a huge implication for those in the LGBT+ community. Having it the way Gamin4Hope sees it, a rapist, a murderer, and a child predator are all equally as sinful for what they have done by simply going out and doing the things that give them those titles. The thing is, though, he would still say the same for people in the LGBT plus community, that they are equally as sinful as a rapist, a murderer, and a child predator, all because they engage in activities that are deemed sinful. If he wants to use that interpretation of biblical text to derive his positions and moral compass, he could do whatever he wants. I just don't think he should have addressed the point in his video, because I cannot fathom how, even if he shows respect to members of the LGBT plus community, he would think it necessary to address the accusation when clearly he is an ally only in respect for shared humanity. But everything that makes someone a part of the LGBT plus community, he sees as bad, which doesn't really make him an ally, and it really doesn't make him pro-LGBT, so why address it at all? Finally, for the trolling and bait category, he addresses how he doesn't neglect his children, isn't a Nazi, isn't unemployed, and didn't groom his wife. To each point, I will sum up the allegation and say what he had to say in his video. For child neglect, what was used against him was a clip of his child crying in the background while he was playing Overwatch 2 on stream. His wife was there attending to the baby was crying because babies cry. It was a total nothing burger that was clearly just made to mess with Gamin4Hope. The Nazi claim just used a screen grab at a certain timestamp of one of his videos where he has his one arm elevated. Yet again, just people pissing with the guy. The unemployed claim is not true currently, but he did a few times quit working traditional jobs so that he could pursue content creation full time. Regardless, this is once again nothing to even care about. Finally, grooming his wife was a claim that used an older video to show how he groomed his wife. However, that video he made was regarding his ex-wife, so the allegation falls totally flat. Just for the record, you can find on his channel using older videos of his to find out roughly when he started dating his current wife and use posts he made on Twitter and X to deduce how old she was when they started dating. From my math, she was nearly 19 when they started, which again is nothing out of the ordinary that I personally don't care about in the grand scheme of anything that you can criticize the guy for. What I do want to highlight on a bigger scale are three major issues that I found and saw throughout his content, and they are as follows. Unperformed outrageous generosity, overexplaining and continuous engagement, and finally, oversharing. To his credit, he did answer to each of these points in my interview with him, but regardless of that fact, his past and more recent actions are worthy of genuine criticism beyond just poking fun at him because it's funny to do so. First, I want to start off on the unperformed outrageous generosity bit. Throughout most of the coverage surrounding Gamin4Hope, I haven't seen any mention of this fact that happened earlier in his content creation career, more specifically April of 2022 through seemingly September 2022. During that time, he vowed to use half of the revenue he generated from Twitch to do acts of outrageous generosity, and even continued to use the hashtag on his short-form content for a while, before seemingly just abandoning the hashtag. And from my understanding, never bringing up the point again. I'll actually play his short now where he discusses this further.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody out there on social media, wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you're doing exceptionally well. I wanted to let you guys know really quick that I am intending to do something very different in the Twitch space with the revenue that I make. One of the things that I really want to stress is that when I came back to Twitch, it was never about money. And the way I want to prove that to you is that going forward, any revenue that I make from Twitch, half of that will be going towards supporting, whether it's another creator or someone in the community who is in need. We'll kind of assess that as a community. But I've always believed in outrageous generosity. And while our income isn't substantial, I don't believe that the reason that I am on the internet to reach gamers is to increase my revenue. It's to increase the people that walk through the pearly gates at the end of their life, if you understand what I'm saying. I hope you guys will tune into the stream. There's actually going to be one today at 2:30 p.m. Central Time over on twitch.tv/Gamin4Hope. Hope to see you there.
Now, completely on its face, this isn't seemingly an issue. He said he'd do something, he never mentions it again, it is what it is. The fact that he never addressed this until I spoke with him is pretty indicative of how his audience from before, and probably even still now, doesn't care he didn't follow through with his word. However, a part of me does think it could have been used tactically. Discourse online has started to shift beyond just poking fun at him for his gameplay, and into aspects of career that point to things worthy of genuine criticism. One such point of contention is that Gamin4Hope is actually a grifter. Now, he denies that claim in my interview with him, but when you put both together, it could be proof that he is one. He said he was going to do this really awesome stuff and going out and doing outrageous generosity, but then he never did. Then he asked for money multiple times. Personally, I think the guy is a genuinely kind dude. Imperfect, sure, but he seems cool and showed nothing but respect for me in our correspondence together. But a part of me, surely a more cynical part, feels a bit of manipulation could be afoot here, and I hope maybe I can show it better by relying on my interview with him. When I first asked him about outrageous generosity, he says this. Okay, so I remember seeing in your content how you at some point wanted to do acts of outrageous generosity, but I know that throughout your career as a content creator, you've had financial struggles. Were you ever able to do any acts of outrageous generosity?
Yes, 100%. Now, am I willing to give specific examples? No, and that may look like I'm lying to you guys, and that's fine. But the way that I look at outrageous generosity is I keep that between my wife and I. We do those things privately. They aren't meant to be in the public eye because it's not for public attention. It's meant to be doing the right thing at the right time with the right circumstances, right? So if I know of somebody that has a need and we have a way to fill that need, we fill the need and we don't say anything about it. It's not something that we don't want to be braggadocious in the sense of what we're doing to help other people.
See, here he says he's done it before. But now watch when I press him just a little bit further later on in the interview.
I worked at a financial institution well, actually, I worked at two of them, and I could see a world where during those times that I was like, oh, I could just do that because I don't really have the need for the revenue. And then when that shifted and we had a need for the revenue, I stopped using the hashtag, stopped talking about it, but never really made an outright announcement to change anything.
And finally, he even says something really awesome about the outrageous generosity bit, saying this.
It was to say this is something that I want to do with it, and I just wanted ideas. So that fell apart because I then needed the money regularly. Now, up until that point, I'm trying to remember if I ever got a payout while I was still using the outrageous generosity tag. Because, for those that are unfamiliar, you may be familiar yourself, Gag, I don't know. But most platforms, Twitch and YouTube included, let's say I make money in the month of June. You don't get paid until the middle of the month of July for whatever you made in June. So I would be willing to say that I don't remember distinctly doing the math, but I'm willing to bet I didn't even get a payout. At the time, the payout threshold on Twitch, I want to say at the time it was $100. I could be wrong on that, but whatever the threshold was, I wasn't hitting it every month. So because I did, I'm willing to bet that if we went back and looked, that I didn't hit the threshold, and that I just went, okay, we did it for this length of time. It's no big deal. I just moved on. But I will also say this. I'm actually happy to look at that after we're off our call and conversation today, Gag. This is like full accountability. I'm willing to look back at that. And if I find that I'm just dead wrong and I made an error in judgment and like continued to, let's say that I made a payout that month as an example, right? And okay, well, I needed the money. No, that's on me and I got to own that shit. And I'm happy to go back now and double it. So whatever it was, if it was $100, half of that would have been, the Twitch revenue, half of that would have been 50. I'm happy to make $100 charitable donation wherever now and make that public because I said it publicly. Because my goal is never to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. We even talked about it before he brought up the question. Because I don't want to be that guy. That's never something I want to be painted as. I don't want to give anybody the idea that that's something I want to do. And if that's how it comes across, and especially if I look back then and I did in fact get a payout in that, again, corresponding to that timeline we just talked about, where if it was, did you say it was April of 22 that I posted that? Is that right?
Yes, yep.
Okay. So if April and potentially March, because again, if I didn't hit the threshold in March, it would have added into whatever April had. So again, I'm willing to take full accountability, go through the whole bit. If I got a payout in the month of May, whatever that payout was from Twitch, I'm happy to take that in half and double it. So basically, whatever, easy math, whatever the payout was, and do a charitable donation now, because that's an error in judgment and maybe even just a genuine space cadet moment.
He even said he wants to do fundraisers and things of that nature in the future. But even during my interview, I felt that his shifting from he and his wife do outrageous generosity to him basically conceding he never did it, at least in the context of the Twitch bit, kind of makes me think he's being a bit shifty here. The problem with this, though, is it's a feeling. I watch a video breakdown that he's grifting, and I kind of see both sides of things. He responds to a point in an interview with me, and I get where he's coming from. I think maybe he could be a grifter and even manipulative, but without much more concrete proof, I find it hard to pin him as a grifter or manipulator. All of that being said, though, it is a fact that he vowed to use half of his Twitch earnings for outrageous generosity. It is also a fact that he never did it and totally dropped it. It's really up to you how you feel about all these parts and how they align together, but of all my criticisms, I feel that the unperformed outrageous generosity bit is definitely the weakest. My second bit of criticism, which I believe has stronger legs to stand on from my perspective at least, is overexplaining and continuous engagement, specifically with detractors, trolls, and others that are just coming to him to have an easy laugh, and incessantly berate him with random accusations to get him riled up and get a response out of him. The earlier part of this video should be more than enough to support my claim. He literally responded to people saying he neglects his children, all because on stream he continued to play while his baby cried. Another point, that he seemingly groomed his wife. Like, what are we talking about? Why are we addressing that? See, the thing is, at least with the neglect accusation, he shows where it came from, and you can easily tell it's some detractor account messing with him. But if it was a serious claim, it wouldn't say Gamin4Hope at the top. It would be properly addressed. Maybe he'd be mocked to some degree, but child neglect is so serious that the claim would have been evidenced in a much better way than that. Even the anti-LGBT part of his video, he shows a deceptively edited video where he says he doesn't participate in the pronouns discussion, while Azaria uses her ability to jump over a pride crosswalk to avoid touching it altogether. Now, it wasn't his gameplay, and I guess it's okay to maybe address it if your core audience is going wild over it and thinks it's true, but again, it's obvious it's a detractor. And this was even seen in my interview with him. I'll play a bit of it shortly, but I didn't even mention any specific detractor account or even any specific detractor short form video that I have seen. Prior to the interview, and still to this day because I'm on the Gamin4Hope algorithm, I had seen what he's about to address, but it's wild that he even mentioned it to me. And here's the clip.
And then I've heard there's a scratch and sniff meme about me now, which is interesting. Apparently someone clipped me adjusting in my chair and then smoothing out my mustache, which is what actually happened, and said, "Oh, he scratched his balls and sniffed it." I'm like, okay. I just like, whatever you guys want to think, man. I don't even know what to say to that one. That's wild.
Now look, I already went over how I don't think he should have addressed the anti-LGBT part because, at least in my eyes, he is surely not pro-LGBT+. But this specific video that was not mentioned before, this didn't need addressing because, especially the men watching this, we know, okay? We know what he did in that video. It wasn't him adjusting. He's guilty, okay? He did it, okay? The world weeps. It's all sad. It's embarrassing. It sucks. Most men out there don't record themselves to a live audience. He's guilty. I don't know why he said it. There was no point to talk about it. I asked about content creators in general. I wasn't talking about, like, detractor channels pissing with them. And he talks about a video. He's guilty. Don't address it. You're fucking guilty. They pinned you. You're God. But obviously, going back to the seriousness of the video, the constant engagement with these accounts only promotes them further because it feeds into them. By engaging in such ways, you embolden them to keep going because they know it gets under your skin. That's why it's best to not engage with such obvious bait and trolling, because it becomes a horrible feedback loop that just perpetually feeds itself. To that end, I and many others would say that it's best to only ever engage if it's impacting your core audience. Going back to the grooming part that I mentioned earlier on, if I had said in this video that I did the math and it turns out she was younger than the range I explicitly gave, that could be worthy of addressing. But some random detractor whose only goal is to mess with you, it's not worth it. Hell, even I have some experience with this. Whenever I had a beard, people used to call me flats, so I actually lean into it. Others, though, just say really mean things to me that shouldn't be engaged with, like this comment from my H3H3 video that says I look like Jared Fogle pre-weight loss. Obviously, that's wrong and messed up on many levels. Like, for one thing, I don't even like Subway. But realistically, it's best all in all not to respond or engage with them. Doing so is just better overall because if or when it gets too bad or goes too far, at least you'll be better off knowing you didn't indirectly or directly fan the flames or poke the bear. And that would be my second biggest criticism. He should not engage with this type of content. It's funny for onlookers, sure, but that is not what he should be doing. Now, my biggest criticism of Gamin4Hope is oversharing. But it seems that he still doesn't see things how I do. It is my stance that people, especially parents, should not in any circumstance make content surrounding their children. I've had this stance back when I covered Autism Mom Life, I had it prior to then, and I have the stance now. In fairness though, Gamin4Hope doesn't particularly make content out of his children, but the problem still remains that he did feature them and that content is still up on his channel. Another element to this oversharing criticism I have is that he not just featured his children in content, but he made personally identifying information about them public. If I do research on a content creator, I shouldn't be able to go through only their publicly facing social media and be able to find out their children's full names and birthdays, or their wife's or anything like that. Now, his wife is a part of his content. I kinda disagree with that, but she's an adult. I really don't care too much about that in the grand scheme of things. But children, that is just wrong on so many levels. Really, the reasoning for my criticism is multifaceted. The internet is a barbaric place. If you put content out, anyone has the right to come across it and criticize it, or even comment on any or all parts of that content. So, using this logic, by putting children online in content, you are putting them out there, whether you know it or not, to be ruthlessly criticized, mocked, or even far worse. Of course, if a bad actor chooses to go further than what the laws of their region allow for, that's wrong, and it's not on the content creator that the person chose to do something that goes beyond what most would find acceptable on the internet. But nonetheless, no parent or guardian, or any adult for that matter, should ever make content featuring children unless it is strictly created, maintained, and there is the utmost care to ensure those children are shielded from doxing, online harassment, or anything else that could harm that child, whether it be physically or psychologically, at the time of filming and especially after. All that to say, that care was not taken by Gamin4Hope, and that's what I find totally deplorable. Now, to his credit, he has since told me that he will go back and try deleting tweets featuring identifying information on his children, and he has also said he doesn't think he will make content with them going forward because he and his wife had a conversation regarding that topic, especially following an eye-opening event where he found himself in the sights of someone he alleges harassed him and his family, likely using information Gamin4Hope had put out himself, which made it easier for people to find his dogs. But all this to say, I know I'm on the far end of the spectrum when it comes to my opinion on content featuring children. I'm sure parents out there think I'm just a hater or I have too strong of a stance, and that's absolutely fine. But if I haven't convinced you at this point, I want to discuss one additional part of the oversharing by Gamin4Hope that crossed way too many lines, which he even admitted to me in my interview, more specifically a situation regarding his stepson's biological father. Now, out of respect for all those involved, Gamin4Hope, Mrs. Gamin4Hope, yes, that's what his wife goes by, their son, and the biological father, I will not play any of the videos related to this topic because Gamin4Hope was very straight with me when I asked him about it, admitted to doing it, and even expressed how he regrets doing it. So really, you're just going to have to take my word on it as well as his, but this actually did happen. Basically, at some point, which I won't specify, Gamin4Hope's stepson's biological father allegedly broke an unofficial custody agreement that they once had. After it was broken, the stepson's biological father sued for custody, and Gamin4Hope asked his audience for financial support. This alone is probably bad enough because, let's be honest, I as some random person on the internet should not have been able to find out any of this in the first place. But what's worse is that Gamin4Hope, in asking for support, spoke poorly of the biological father by saying he shouldn't be a part of his stepson's life. Even if it's true, this information should never have been spoken online. Because what if Gamin4Hope's stepson saw that video? Would that not potentially cause unnecessary stress in his life? I think he was maybe too young to understand the gravity of that, but still, Even today, the stepson could see that and have a lot of internal psychological strife from it. And this is all because Gamin4Hope foolishly made too much of his life public. I just want to reiterate, I think Gamin4Hope is probably a decent dude, and he showed me nothing but respect and kindness when I spoke with him, and in our correspondence back and forth, etc. At the time of filming that interview, and even filming and uploading this video, I have a little over 340 subscribers, but he still chose to hop on a call with me and answer all my questions. Some of his answers I'm a bit iffy on, as I mentioned earlier in my first criticism section, but overall I have to admit that it's commendable he was willing to do that despite my channel size, and show me respect even knowing that I was making a video on him that was leaning negative. And yes, I've said this multiple times, but you heard it right. He knew I was making a negatively skewed video on him, and he still did the interview. All this to say, I hope other content creators take notes of my criticisms and what Gamin4Hope has done, and look to not make those same mistakes, especially the over-engaging with bad actors and oversharing personal information, whether it be about yourself or your loved ones. If you make content out of those closest to you, you could be unintentionally putting them in harm's way, whether it be simple criticisms, or potential harm to them in the future if they see that content, or even way worse that I don't think I need to get to in this stage of the video. So, please, if you haven't already, go watch the interview I did with Gamin4Hope, as I believe it was illuminating for me and probably will be for you as well. Also, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and commenting down below. I make gaming videos. Funnily enough, Overwatch 2 is something I play as well and have made content on. I also make commentary videos, as well as other random gag slop. See ya!